I'm just excited, and we about to get underway. So if you could do me a favor and put those blessed hands together as I bring forth our guest this morning, Michael and Mya Bowman. If you could come on and put your hands together for them as they come, looking fabuloso. Yes. Go ahead, Papa Squad. Yes. Indeed, indeed. So I want to kind of start this first. I want to start first by kind of giving these two their flowers, and I believe that this will set the stage for what I believe that is capable of happening here. So first of all, I want to start by giving them their flowers. I don't think you two, and y'all excuse me, I'm gonna talk to them for a little bit, then I'll talk to y'all. I talk to y'all all the time, so don't. So first of all, I want to start by giving y'all flowers. I was briefly talking to my wife about this because, like I said, I don't really like to prep too much of this. But as we had begun to set this up and circle around what we want to kind of discuss, I kind of stopped in my tracks and I said, I don't think they realize how incredible they are. I don't think that they realize how incredible they are because in this thought of becoming, that you two have become without seeing. And so, how do you become? And I'm gonna really ask you this question a little bit. How do you become what you've never beheld? And so, how long? Get your microphone, please. How long have you all been? You have a microphone as well. How long have you all been married now?
30 years.
So they've been married. Yeah. So they've been married 30 years. Now here's where the flowers come in. They've been married 30 years without a direct example. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And so, can I tell you age, bro?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, he turned 50, which is a milestone. You know, he turned 50, and on his birthday, I think I shared this with him when he ministered here, and I just begin to see people pour out to him what that he meant to them and the person that he is. And so he's become a great father, again, without a consistent, am I right about it? Without a present like that father. And so and likewise yourself. And so a lot of times when we raise, I know a little bit of your background, being raised by a single parent, automatically that goes, people think that that's mama, and that ain't your situation. So how is it that you become a father without one, really? And how is it that you become a mother without one, really? How is it that you are, I'm loading up on you, but I'm gonna come back around. How is it that you all can have built what you have built? I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but how is it that you have built what you have built without really being, you know what I'm saying, without seeing it? Because I think that that's amazing. So if we could, before we really get into this, could we give them a hand clap of praise for being incredible individuals? Because I would say from my standpoint, like it's easy for me to, it's a lot easier for me to become who I was because I saw it. You know what I'm saying? My parents were together until, you know what I'm saying, my father passed first. And again, my father was always there, my mother was always there, so I always had it. So to me, it was a normality. So how do you create? So let's start right here, and I want to start with yourself first, Mr. Michael. How is it? I told y'all weren't ready. How is it that you become this father that you're becoming? And I want you to, of course, bring into that, you know what I'm saying, the learning aspect of it. Because here's the tip of the cap to where I'm looking at this as. Because I think that when we talk about becoming, is that we have a target. So when we say becoming, we have a target, but I don't believe that's what becoming is. So how did you become who you're becoming as a father, as a man of God, as a husband? Ready? Go.
A loaded question right there. Well, first of all, thanks for having us. Um, as some of you know, I was raised by my mom. I did have my father, but he wasn't presently in my life. And at the time, I even told my mom, I even told my wife that whenever I grow up, I want to have a family where they have a mother and a father. So I didn't have a blueprint as far as how to be a father. So in my mind, I just always said it. I told myself that whenever I have a family, I want to be a father, but I didn't know how to be the father. So the only way how I knew how to be one is to pretty much rely on God. I had to rely on the Holy Spirit. At that time, I wasn't thinking about that because I wasn't saved at the time. But I had the mindset that I wanted to be a good father. Father being my um, family, be a father to my sons, to my daughters, those things like that. But it was not easy. Um, like I said, I really had to totally rely on the Lord as far as how to be, because I like, Lord, teach me how to be a father, teach me how to raise up my kids and those things like that. So those things I had to kind of walk out, and I just kind of went in that direction. Um, yeah, so it's so much I can say about that.
Well, that's what we're here for. Because you're going to help somebody today.
The best thing I can tell you is that, like I said before, you really have to rely on the Lord to really help you to be that type of man, because I didn't know how to be a man even though I was a man. I didn't know how to be a father even though I was a father. So it was a hard journey. It was trial and error. And those things, as we start, as we was together, we was learning too as to be a husband and wife, because we didn't have that blueprint as well as far as how to be a husband and a wife. We just kind of just went with what we know. Um, we just kind of winged it just a little bit and just try to learn. We just learned as we got older, and life itself teach us. We learn from each other as well. Learn how to be able to cater to one another, be able to love one another. Um, I mean, I don't know if you want to kind of.
You ain't getting out that easy, bro. That's why I
Yeah.
went with you first. You ain't getting out that easy. So I know you're giving us the general premise of relying on God. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that. How do you do that when, okay, so you don't have the example of a father presently and all, or, saying all the time. And so you're kind of learning in your journey, as you were saying. Okay, so how do you get through coming into salvation and then learning, being a father, and then, okay, I know that I've made an error at this stage of their life. Now, how do I kind of, saying, how do I reset myself now that I know this? Because there's some things that you can't learn until you make a mistake. And so there's some things that, again, before everybody wants to give, there's a lot of people that would give you all these things. They'll give you all this advice, and it'll be good advice. But there are some things that you just haven't had a conversation about, and you won't really learn it until you come into that episode. Does that make sense to everybody? It's like you're faced with something like, I've never been here. I've never had a conversation about being here, but now I realize that I've been in error, right? Or uh, I didn't do this the way it could be done. So how do you reset in that moment? I told y'all ain't know what y'all was getting into.
But first of all, like I was saying, alluding to earlier. Well, first, when I got saved, um, again, I was relying on God to really help me to be, first of all, a man, how to be a man. Second of all, when I got married, um, I was asking him as well to learn how to be a husband to my wife. And then when we had got kids, then he asked him again, say, Lord, help me to be a father. Again, I didn't have that model as far as how to be a husband. I didn't have that model as far as how to be a man, because I was raised by a woman. So I only knew from a woman perspective, but at the same time, I know I was a man. So there's things I had to kind of grow into that manhood by walking it out by trials and errors and making mistakes and those things like that. But I didn't let those errors or those trials, pretty much keep me down. I just pretty much kind of learned from it and grew from it and just started walking the best way I knew how. Um, but with that being said, my mom did put like male figures in my life to where I have an example. But at the end of the day, I had to walk this journey pretty much alone or by myself. And so that was a hard journey for me to kind of walk in that direction. So I started getting into the word and started getting into the Bible and started really trying to understand does it take to be a man? What does it take to be a husband? What does it take to be a father? And as I started praying and I started reading the word, the Holy Spirit started illuminating some things to me to where not only was I reading, but I was also applying the principle as far as how to do those things that I was requiring and ask from God. And as I started beginning to start walking in those things, I started seeing the fruits of it. I didn't see it automatically, but I started planting. The seed was planted, and I started seeing the things start manifesting. And I'm like, okay, I'm knowing going in the right direction as far as being a man, being a husband, being a father. And I always want to get to that point where when I grow up, when my son grow up, or when my daughter grow up, they will have an example of what a father is, but what is a man of God looks like. So those are the examples that I want to portray to them so they can see, because I didn't have those things. But because I didn't have them, that drove me to want to maybe to become better, becoming a man, becoming a husband, becoming a man of God, becoming the thing that God has called me to do. It is not so much of a pulpit per se, but what does he call you? What is your identity? Who are you as a person, as a man, as a woman? You have to first understand your identity, one in Christ. Well, he that's in Christ is a new creature. Old things have passed away, but all things have become new. So some old things that I knew had to come to pass. They had to be thrown away. They had to put on his new identity, his new perspective. And those are things that I had to kind of do, to answer your question.
One more layer before I get to your wife. So, how do you navigate things that you've been told, but you don't see in your track? So what I mean by that, right? So when we get into church, right? We be told things. You're gonna be a great father, right? You're gonna be a great husband. You're gonna be a great this, or you're gonna be this, that, and third. And it's not that you're not going to accomplish those things. It's just that when you're facing it, when you come into it, okay, I've been told this, right? So I've been even told by God. I've been told by Holy Ghost that this is what I'm supposed to do. This is who I'm supposed to be, and I'm trying to walk that direction, but I don't see it. So I know what I've been told, but it ain't tracking. Does that make sense to everybody? I know what I've been told by Holy Ghost, by God first and foremost, but even if I've been told by a trusted, true, what I'm saying, I ain't got to test what they say, man or woman of God, I've been told this, but it ain't tracking. So it's like, how do you, give me just something from your perspective. Like, how do you just work through that, that obstacle of, okay, I know what I've been told, so now I'm not looking for instruction because I have instruction. So I'm not looking for instruction, but I'm like, okay, I'm applying it, but it's not appearing. Like, okay, you said apply this, right? Old things have passed away, so I put away some of these old things, but then I still see residue. And then sometimes you see that residue in your offspring. So you can't even be upset with them because you're like, that's me. I want to dig, bro.
I wasn't prepared for that one.
I know. That's the beauty of it.
Wow. Hmm. I could talk about it for us. We talking about purpose, because I have been told um, plenty of times I was supposed to be this, and I believe in what people have said about me.
Talk, Mike.
And so I kind of went on that path as well. They said it, and I would trust them because they are men of God. They are one of God. So I'm just going to roll with what they said about me. Um, Fast forward, when I discovered that there were certain things that there was said about me that I didn't see, I started to question myself. I started to question my identity. I started questioning, who am I? Because these are the things that people said. about me. And one thing I learned was through the process was I could not rely on what people said
Come now.
about me, even though they're trustworthy sources or even those people that you trust in or believe in, they not God. And I had to trust in what God said, which means He is the final say so. So I had to say, Lord, what do you say about me? Make the story short, I had met my apostle and them at the time. I was in like a class or whatever. And the question she asked me was like, what was you called to? Who are you? And so immediately I went on what I knew. And what what broke was she says, are you sure about that? So immediately I got offended. I'm like, what you mean? What you talking about? I just told you who I am. In my head, I ain't tell her that. Let me get clear. But in my head, she hit a nerve because I'm like, this is who I am. This is who God calls me to be. And she said, well, I'm not going to say that, but just go pray and just ask the Lord. And next time we, get together, and when, tell me what the Lord really told you to say. I said, okay, all right, I'm going to do it. But He going to tell me the same thing in my head. So moving forward, I prayed, and the Lord gave me a dream, and He really spoke to me. And what I was expected was not what I expected. So when He actually told me who I was and my identity, I was like, huh? Are you serious? And I didn't believe it at first. But when I came back and wrote what He told me and just really meditate on it, I had to really embrace and trust and receive what He had said about me. So when I talked with her, she says, well, what did the Lord say? I told her. She said, yeah, that's what you are. I'm just confirming what you say. And I'm like, are you serious? So it changed my whole mindset, my whole perspective as to who I was in Him first. And as I understand who I was in first, that's when I started to begin the journey.
I wanna reset you real quick right here. So, was it frustrating knowing that you were you were after this target, right? So you were becoming who you weren't.
Yes, I was walking in a false identity.
So how is that getting over that mental hurdle of I've been all this time because you had been, you know what I'm saying, you got saved before I did. So I know you had been saved for a while, becoming who you weren't, and then you run into this wall where somebody is like, okay, are you sure? And the integrity in you, because some people would be like, I know who I am, right? But you went back and you checked with whom we know now, we should have checked with in the first place, right? But we don't always know that going into a thing. We rely on people and they tell us a thing, and sometimes it's a grace of a thing, or it's just it's a snippet of a thing, right? So if somebody says, okay, for instance, okay, you prophetic, okay, you may have prophetic notions, but you might not be a prophet. But if
Correct.
somebody goes around saying that, saying, oh, you're a prophet, because they can only see, dimly, right? Or they can only see in pieces. And so now we go, some of us that don't check in, and I'm glad that you were honest about that. Hey, hold on, actually I had to go and check with God, because now in your walk at that time, you were mature enough to be like, you know what, let me just go to God and double check this. And then you're like, okay, well, what I heard, I wasn't expecting, because I was relying on what somebody else said. So that's why I wasn't tracking. I was becoming somebody who I wasn't. And so now it's almost like, okay, I've been on this path trying to go this way because I thought that was it. And now I'm thinking in you know what I'm saying, in the complications of that, right? Because now it's really wrestling with an identity, because I thought I was on my way, and I really wasn't. So how do you like get past that hurdle of being like, now that I've checked with God and God has told me, and now I have what God called me to be, and then confirmation by man. And let me point that out real quick. Make sure that in your calling that you understand that that is the calling from God. The calling has to come from God to be confirmed by that man, not called from man, and then you try and check with God.
Correct. Because because even the first time when I was told that, when I was on that journey, I was like, okay, let me prepare myself for this. This is what people said about me. And I'm thinking this is what God had said about me. Notice I said I thought that God said about me when it wasn't even confirmed from him. In that process, as I was going, I didn't see the fruit of the fact that what was said or what a label was put on me, that it wasn't coming to fruition. Until I made that decision when I got with my pastor at the time, and I mean at this point, that she made me realignment. I was out of alignment at that point, not knowing that I was going off track, detouring in another direction where it was never meant for me to see. It was meant for me to fail. So it was a false place, a false identity where I was going to until God sent somebody to retract or put me back in alignment to where the place where I really supposed to be going to.
Isn't there something how that with your whole heart, you're walking in obedience, right? You're trying to do what you believe God told you to do, but because the truth of the matter is, some of us don't have the type of personal relationship that we ought to with God. Some of us still have our ultimate reliance goes on someone else. Now nobody knew heights. Y'all not had that problem. Do not do that to me. But like sometimes we rely, and it's not because that person is off. Again, sometimes they can only see a certain aspect of it or whatever have you. They don't see a part of it, right? If I say I see you speaking in front of, and it's authentic by the way, I see you speaking in front of great people. Automatically, sometimes we put titles on ourselves. Well, if I'm going to be speaking in front of great many people, would that mean I must go have a large congregation? No, that could be one day in your life where he puts you in front of that many people, and that was what they were saying. You see what I'm saying? But sometimes people will tell us things, and there's sometimes they're off. That happens. Sometimes they're showing us a perspective, and then sometimes they're showing us a singular event. If I could, real quick, when God gives Joseph a prophetic preview, as I like to call him, right? He shows him the end of the process. So he shows his parents and his brother and his siblings bowing down to him, right? He doesn't show them how he's going to get there. And so again, you sit there and be like, okay, well, you thinking in his mind, if you could put yourself in those shoes real quick, you had this dream that God gives you where you have your parents, and if you know anything about Hebraic culture, you know it's very rare that a father would bow down to his son. But so you have your parents bowing down before you and your siblings bowing down before you, and you're not the eldest son. Right? You're not the eldest son. And so it's like, how is this supposed to take place? And you may think that it's going to happen in the setting that you're in. When it was going to happen was never going to be in the setting that he was in. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So like, if you're looking at it from your window, well, this is supposed to happen, and you trying to explain it to people, and they're like, I don't see it. Right? Well, they can't see it because you're not in the setting. You see what I'm saying? And so sometimes the things that God has said about our lives, it's not that it's not going to happen. It's just that we haven't hit the setting yet. Man, I need to talk to somebody real quick. I said some things that God has shown you in your life, you are going to see. You just haven't been put in the setting yet. When God was showing him that bowing down, that wasn't going to be after he got through all those things that we know that he went through and he became the provider. So it wasn't about Joseph getting to Egypt. It was about Joseph being a provider in Egypt. And the bowing didn't show him being a provider. Did y'all catch what I just said? The bowing did not show him that he was going to be a provider, but watch this. He was becoming a provider the whole. So I just want to speak this into you real quick. Who God has always intended you to be, you're becoming. And I think sometimes because we haven't seen the setting, now again, some stuff you know because of prayer and consecration. Some of that stuff, y'all was off. I don't know what God y'all was talking about, right? But some of those things. And how do I know the difference? That question may come up, right? How do I know the difference? Well, what does your prayer life really look like? Are you asking God, right, for what He has for you instead of what He has for you? Do you understand the difference? Because sometimes it's like, God, what do you have for me? And we start looking for stuff. We start looking for titles and sometimes God's like, what I have for you is a maturation process. That's what I have for you. So I'm gonna let your wife cook a little bit. Maya, how are you doing? I'm really good. So
Well, how are you?
I'm good. So give me a little bit. You seen how I set it up with Mike. Give me a little bit of how it was becoming her, becoming a mother, becoming a wife, becoming a woman of God. And you can like interweave all those things in there because I want to let you cook for a little bit.
For me, I would say I grew up seeing a lot of what I did not want. And so because of that, I chose different. And I wasn't saved. I wasn't, filled with the Holy Spirit at these times. I just made different choices because I saw outcomes that I did not want in my life. In a way, you can say I was trying to control the narrative a little bit because I knew what I didn't want. So I was like, well, I ain't doing that, and I ain't doing that, and I ain't doing that. And so I think because I just made up in my mind at that time in my life that I wanted different, I just chose different. I would say learning to um, mother and learning to just become a woman, walk in womanhood, and all of those things. It was really trial and error because I did not have a template, as you said. And it just made me say, well, a lot of times we give to our children what we did not have. And so I was like, well, I didn't have this, so I'm going to give this to my children. Now, I'm not going to tell you that that is always correct because sometimes what our children need is not what we did not have. Sometimes they need something different, but because we're just saying, well, I didn't have this, I'm going to give them what I didn't have, that may not be their need. I had to learn that as I got older and matured and all those things. So a lot of becoming for me has been a lot of unbecoming.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Talk.
I've had to my life has been unraveled, and I've had to. Everything has in my life has had an R in front of it. It's just been a lot of redoing, restoring, renewing. All of those things had to happen in my life, and so, in a nutshell, it was really, even as my husband alluded to, he may not say it like me, but shedding that old so that I could become. And that wasn't unlearning because my experiences and my upbringing told me that I had to be this way. And it created a mindset that I operated in, even with my children. And I was not, the best mother, although I gave the best I had. And sometimes we have to come to that acknowledgement that sometimes your best isn't good enough, and that's okay. You just keep getting better so you can give better as you keep going. And that's what I did. My best wasn't everything my kids needed, but I got better. And now they get a better part of me. And so I just learned that my experiences is not what defined me. And that was the unbecoming because I took on my circumstances and my experiences as my identity. And not to really go deep, but I want to go a little deep. I grew up without a mom. So when my mom left, I felt like she took me with her. My identity, her love, affection, nurturing, all of the things that she was, I felt like when she left, she took it. And so my identity became an abandoned person, an abandoned daughter. It made me feel like I was an orphan, that I was unloved, and I wasn't chosen. And if your mother don't stay, how important are you? So that took my significance. Do you really matter? And so I took on this identity of just not mattering, not being loved, not being chosen, not being selected, just not being enough. And so that became my mindset. So I walked around with that victim mindset for a very, very long time, probably late into my 30s. So I just chose different. I chose to get better. I chose to figure out who I was in God. Before anything ever happened to me, who was I to him? What did I mean to him? How did he see me? And adopting how he thought about me helped me walk more and more into my identity. And so because of that, I was able to move forward into this becoming, as I became, or however you want to say it.
So, in unbecoming or whatever have you, right? So you recognize there's things that you don't want because we can learn from what we see, and we can learn from what we don't see. That makes sense. So sometimes we learn because of. That would be my scenario, and sometimes we learn in spite of. Does that make sense? But learning through the lens of lack is difficult. Does that make sense? Because that's what she was speaking to, is learning through the lens of lack. It's like, because I didn't have, now sometimes, and you can speak to this, right? Sometimes I'm overdoing.
Absolutely.
Because what I'm really trying to do is I'm really trying to heal a person that is grown.
Yes.
And I know, I'm not trying to get into the semantics of this. I know a lot of people talk about going back and healing a little girl. You can't. Trying to go back and heal a little boy. You can't. You're grown. But what you do have to do is now figure out how to mend from where you are. Because you can't, because going back to where you've been doesn't solve anything. Does that make sense? And so in that, again, in that becoming, whatever have you, when you're shedding that old, and both of you can chime into this if you want to, when you're shedding that old, is there, and I might not be saying this perfectly, but is there like almost like a mourning period? Well, like you're mourning the death, like for yourself, right? I'm mourning the death of who I thought I was. Or I'm mourning the death of, what used to be. Not necessarily even because not even necessarily because I'm sad to see it go, but you got to understand, I've been living with this person for 20, 30 years. And so now there's a certain thing when you've got used to yourself being a certain way, when you change, you miss your old self. Right? Because before I knew this or before I discovered that, it was easier for me to operate because I was operating in ignorance. But now I'm operating in knowledge, knowing that I was ignorant. And now I'm trying to forgive myself and work through this thing. And I'm sitting up here trying to mourn this person that I have to forgive first. And if anybody has lost somebody, right, that you want to, you know what I'm saying, you want to forgive that person, right? I can't forgive someone who's no longer there. So how do I get through that mourning stage of being like, I was trying to become what they told me, but now I had to put that to death because that's never who I was supposed to be. But I was trying to become that for 15, 20 years. I was trying to be, you know what I'm saying, I had taken on this identity of abandonment and all these things that you were saying and unbecoming. Now, I'm unbecoming, but I was this person for years. And now I can't act like I'm a human being. I can't just be like, well, they did. Right? I mean, most of us can't do that. I mean, if you had a relationship with somebody, most of us can't just be like, that's that. Most of us have to be like, okay, I have to kind of have some kind of closure. So if either one of you or both of you could speak to that mourning stage, or, maybe even give us a premise of how long that took, or even if you're still in that process, how's that going?
I'll talk about it a little bit. You're still on the journey. And sometimes you ask yourself when it's going to end. And it's a process as you start going through, because now you're trying to connect or get alignment with this new identity that is foreign to you.
That's good. Say it again.
It's foreign to you.
Uh-huh.
And so now you're trying to understand what.
Hold on, bro. You a stranger in your own body?
I'm a stranger in your own body.
Go ahead, y'all.
So y'all on the discovery of really who you are. When you thought that you were this person, again, I was walking in this false identity because of what people said, and not knowing that, now that I'm on a new journey, that's when you think you've pretty much by yourself and alone on this journey, because it's something that you have to discover by yourself. Your mama, daddy, your wife, your spouse cannot even go along in this journey. This is something that you have to walk alone, but you're really not alone. You feel alone, but you're not alone. And you have to understand that God is with you on the journey, and really He's trying to teach you how to really trust and rely on Him through this journey. And as you start going on this journey, that's when the old things, the shedding, just start pulling off on you by layers by layers. You don't really understand how much layers that you have on you as you God start moving along this journey, discovering who you are and becoming. If you think about it, say you're gonna be. You split up, coming. You're coming into your being.
Um, I would say that I really didn't mourn her. I had to forgive her a whole lot. And I had to forgive myself for the things I didn't know.
Come on.
And sometimes, even though you don't know it, you will still hold yourself accountable. But you didn't know at that time, but you know now, because you know now you feel guilty and ashamed and embarrassed, and I should have known better, and I should have did this, and I should have did that. But you didn't know. So I had to let myself off the hook. Even God doesn't hold us accountable for what we do not know. It's when you come into the knowledge of the truth, he holds you responsible for the truth that you now know. And so I had to I had to forgive myself and even give myself some grace. We give a lot of grace to people, a lot of forgiveness to people, a lot of love to people. We give a lot to other people, but we don't give it to ourselves. And if you have it to give to others, you have it to give to yourself. And so I had to start giving myself the very thing that I would walk up to somebody and say, don't be so hard on yourself. Love yourself. Give yourself grace. You're changing. You're becoming. I would be so encouraging, but I wouldn't be encouraging to myself. And so for me, it was a lot of forgiveness for ignorance and a lot of grace for it too. So that's some of the things that I had to learn how to do to be kind to Mya and not beat Mya down, but love Mya up. And how I learned how to do that is I started, again, getting to know God's mindset about me. And then I was able to take what he said. So when I would have these debilitating thoughts or these thoughts that would try to come back, because your past does haunt you, right? It will try until it's completely severed. It will try to come back up and tell you things and make you believe this again when you're walking forward, to believe new things. And so I had to, and I do this to the day, I still have to use the word to remind me what the truth is, because sometimes those thoughts that come from behind, they may not, I would say they are lies because it's not the truth that I'm walking in, but it could have been something that was a truth before. And so because you believed it before, you have to discount it as a lie now because you're walking in a new truth. So for me, it was just really, really forgiving myself and forgiving myself for being a product of my environment, because that's what I was. And I didn't know any better. And so when you know better, you do better. We hear that. But you really have to, what healing has done for me, Pastor Cousin, it has made me, it's made me more responsible. And I used to fear responsibility, because I'd be like, what you want from me? Don't want nothing. Don't want nothing from me. I didn't want anybody to want anything from me, because now I was responsible for giving you something. You pulling on me. But as I started healing and becoming, and God was putting things into me, and so now you're responsible. You can't walk around with a victim mentality, because I've told you already you are an overcomer.
Oh.
So if you choose to keep that mentality, he's going to hold you responsible for it. Because I told you you're not that. So what you choosing to believe? You know better now. I'm telling you the truth. You're more than a conqueror. He didn't even say you're just an overcomer. He said you're more than a conqueror. So you're not a victim anymore. So why are you still talking like one? Why are you still acting like one? Why are you still hiding? Why are you still cowering back? Why are you still holding on to that? So those were things that now I had to be responsible for. He was maturing me and making me more responsible for how I showed up and how I reacted to certain things, or even responded in the world. So
I think we have to learn, speaking to what you were speaking to, I think we have to learn to war with what God is saying instead of what has been said. And what has been said could have come from us. What has been said could have come from others. What has been said might have come from our past or our history or whatever have you. But I spoke to this a couple of weeks ago, but we have to understand that all of our history is a part of our testimony. Right? So all of our history is a part of my testimony. So some of those things that I was going through wasn't my fault at all. There was something that I was going to go through that was going to be a part of my testimony because I can't be becoming, right, without overcoming. And I can't be an overcomer without having something to get over. And I think sometimes we want to, it's very easy to be rah-rah. We are more than conquerors. Well, that means that you actually have to beat something, right? And even when you watch, if we look at fights, right, nobody respects paper champions, right? Nobody respects paper champions. I need to see you go through something. A lot of the sports stars, whoever it would be, whether it be Ali or Michael, whatever have you, I know we grew up watching the Bulls, so a lot of respect that we have for Mike is what he went through with the Pistons. Forget the championships. It was getting your behind beat for year after year after year after year that when you finally overcame, and I always think about it, I don't care what he say, when he ducked his little head and went down the tunnel, you put your enemy to shame. You see what I'm saying? It's like, but you have to, if you don't go through that, you don't, it's kind of weird how when we don't earn a thing, we don't value it. All right? And so watch this. I want to speak life into somebody. You've earned who you're becoming because of what you've gone through. You've earned who you're becoming because of what you've gone through. You've earned who you're becoming because of what you've gone through. And so sometimes somebody's saying, I'm not worthy of this. Well, think about all the things in your life. So especially if you're coming into the freshness of who God called you to be, right? I'm the least of my family. I'm the least in this city, the Gideon complex. My family is the least in the whole region, and I'm the least of my family. How would you call me to lead all these people over this? And the first time you told me to do something, I'm hiding. I'm going to do it. I don't want to be seen, though. You know what I mean? I'm going to do it under the cover of darkness. But it becoming those things we have to gain. You've earned this because of the things you've been through. Gideon in that situation had been through those kind of warfares or whatever have you. And then God was like, well, now I'm going to have you to lead it. So imagine if he tried to war with what had been said about him, not only from others, from himself, because he said, I am the least. I don't know who told him that, but he told himself that, right? He accepted it. And so I want to speak to this before I don't want to leave my mind. Here's the thing too, Mike, and this is my perspective, but I can walk it down in the Bible. A lot of times what we're doing, we're saying, okay, I'm on this journey, and when is this journey going to, quote unquote, end? Here's where it ends. Last exhale. That's when it ends. Last exhale, just that one. When there's no more breath to come behind that. So it's uncomfortable to be in that seat of discovery. Hello, New Heights. It's uncomfortable because I'm always like, okay, God, what's going on? Because if we talk about jobs, right? Careers. Anybody who's in a career, most likely you want to be at the top end of that career, right? You want to be the most senior person. You want to be the supervisor. You want to be the highest paid. You're chasing something. Well, let me not put it on people. Let me ask y'all a question. Who is satisfied with where they are? Nobody? Nobody is satisfied where they are. This proves this. You ain't. You ain't. You not. You not. Here's the beauty of not being satisfied with where you are. It's trying to becoming the next level. Does that make sense? And so whatever your thing is, if it's career field, I'm trying to become this. I want to be at this, right? In my thing, I don't want to be, in my vocation, I don't want to be a supervisor. I have no desire to be so. But I want that next pay grade, though. Absolutely. You hear what I'm saying? Yes. But there's, hey, y'all can look at me crazy all you want to. I work for a living. You hear what I'm saying? So it's like, I want that next level, but how is that going to be achieved, right? Sometimes you have to go through a process. I told you I had to go through another interview process at the same place I've been working. Shouldn't y'all just give it to me? Just slide you on in there, right? Y'all know me. I'm going to be interviewing with people that know me. Why I got to go? Because that's a part of the, And then watch this. Sometimes the next level that you're going to get to, right? In my situation, and I think this applies across the board. How many of y'all, how many of y'all get raises based on time and service, so to speak, right? So after a certain amount of time, right? After a certain amount of time, you're going to get this much of an increase, or that's the window in which you can get an increase. So that means no matter what you do, no matter what you do, until you come to that time, that next level isn't going to be attained. Now, here's what happens in many dynamics when a level that you want to attain is a matter of time. We lose interest. We get frustrated because, and this is what kicks in spiritually, because now I don't know God's timeline. Because God has said, I believe God, Abraham, but it's been 10 years now. And I never looked at Eleazar as an inheritant. He was a servant. But now because, I'm telling y'all this is going to help somebody, but now because I haven't seen what God said, I start changing it. I heard what God said, but now I'm changing it because I haven't seen what he said, because when is the journey? I'm 75 years old. I was 75 years old when he sent me on this journey. It's been 9 years. And now I'm looking at a servant as an heir. Hold on, wait a minute. That ain't how this is supposed to go. I'm looking at this servant like, is it going to be Eleazar? Because, Lord, you said. And so he gets past, fast forward, he gets past the Eleazar issue. And Eleazar never moves out of position. I hope y'all staying with me because this is relational wise too, which is where I want to go, right? So he doesn't displace Eleazar. But a little more time passes, and then he starts looking at Hagar differently. Not because of what God said, but because of what his wife says, right? Now, his wife has heard the word because they've had conversation, but now she's like, well, I'm with you. I'm not seeing what God said, and we trying to see what God said together. So watch this. Now, I know a lot of women in here be like, ain't nowhere in the world. I ain't seeing it like, hey, look, I can't identify, right? But when you're trying to make something happen, be careful how much you compromise. When you want to see something through, be very careful. Don't compromise at all, but be very careful, because you start seeing even what you know God said. Well, maybe because of the way that society works, well, she's my servant, so she have a seed, then the seed will be mine because she's mine. But what happens when Hagar has that seed? Hagar's like, no, this mine, and you ain't got one. And now you're upset about who you displaced. Does that make sense? But here's the thing. All that is happening while you're trying to become who God said you were supposed to be. Because God said you were supposed to be a father. I ain't seeing no seed. God said you were supposed to be a mother. I ain't seeing no seed. But you know what? I do have this servant right here. And I know nature. And nature says, and society says, and culture says. So I done brought nature, culture, and society into a God-oriented thing. Did anybody catch what I just said? I started involving all these outside things into what God said about my life. And so in your becoming, what I want us to be very careful of is when we grab hold of what is outside of the word and will of God, that we bring into it to try and make it come to pass. That makes sense? And so, again, in that, getting back to the question of it, when we're in that becoming and we're trying to, again, force things and we're waiting on something to happen because it's been 10 years. This should have been happening by now. I ain't even hear this from no man. God, you said. And so now we go through the process of doing something, and then you create something. Then now you have to war with the whole Ishmael thing, right? And you're still waiting on God to do what he says until he comes to you that season where you got to laugh about it, right? Because now you pass your prime. Because you're looking at your natural condition. So I want to speak to everybody. Don't ever look at your natural condition in your becoming. Don't ever look at your natural condition in your becoming, because who you're becoming in God has nothing to do with your natural condition. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And so sometimes we're like, well, God, you know where I'm at in my life right now, but I know where you'll be in your life in me. Does that make sense? And so, God, I'm broke. God, I'm hurt. God, I'm sick. God, I'm this. God, I'm that. But I said that you were going to be this. So that's what I'm talking about, going to war with what he says instead of what has been said. Because what had been said is, you pass your prime. Y'all can't even, what does Sarah say? Hey, I'm too old for this. And reverse, the same things happen with young people. Well, I'm too young for this. Who told you that? Who put that in, who put that in your head to think that you weren't going to be who God said you're going to become? If we go back to David that we was talking about a couple of weeks ago, God sends the prophet to him, right? After all his brothers, and he says, you're going to be king, right? So he says, you're going to be king. And then he goes back to his father's sheep. He said, you're going to be king, and then he's called into the king's chambers, but not to sit in a chair, right? He's called as a musician. They didn't call him to be a king. They called him to be a musician. So now you're in the place that you're going to rule, looking at God crazy. Now, God, you said I was going to be king. It wasn't even my idea. I was cool. I thought I was going to be a shepherd, right? You said I was going to be king. And now I'm in the room. I'm in the room. But they got a whole sermon behind it, so they really should be eating, right? So I'm in the room, but I'm not in the seat. Right? So I'm over here, and I'm just going to use you as a, you know what I'm saying? Because you stand head and shoulders above the people. I had to do it once, cuz. All right. But now I'm looking at something, right? I'm not realizing that, like, I'm in this room, and I know what God said about me, but where God said I was going to be, I see somebody occupying it. And it's frustrating because what could happen is if this person is doing me wrong, now what I'm going to do? Well, God said I'm supposed to be this, so now let me unseat them. Let me unseat them. Bro, just go along. I'm not moving you for real. I know I can't move you for real. Just help me out. Help me do the illustration, bro. Right? You're a man, all right? You bigger than me, all right? I'm sorry. All right. But you know what I'm saying? So you going to usurp authority, just stand there real quick, so that you can have the seat. You know why? Because you thought it was your time. So that's what I'm saying. Thank you. So what I'm saying is, if God has said that was going to be your seat, you ain't got to unseat nobody. Because if you unseat, watch this, if you unseat them from your seat before time, that will be your undoing. Does that make sense? And so as a part that's becoming, I don't mean to go so long, but as a part that's becoming and working through those things and being like, okay, speaking to what you said, okay, when is it going to end? I think it's, and you can speak to this, I think it's embracing the journey. And embracing the journey means that I have to remain reliant. And as much as I say I want to rely on God, that ain't, you know what I'm saying? That ain't easy. I'm gonna tell you what Jesus look. I rely on God until you don't know where you're going. I trust God until it's been years. God, I believe your word. I did a week ago. I did a month ago. I did a year ago. I did a decade ago. Lord, now come on now here. Come on, speak to it. Don't make me keep going because you know I'll run. No, I want you to speak to it because I know you're uncomfortable right now. I want to pull you all the way out of. I want to pull you. You know what I'm saying? You can hurt me later out there. You know what I'm saying? You can whoop me later, but come on, man.
No, I get what you're saying, but that is the frustrating part. I can't speak on that because you can get frustrated in the process, especially in the waiting game, especially when you know that this is what you said, Lord, that I was supposed to become, but why is it not happening yet? And I learned through the process that there was things that was in me that God was still processing within me. And he didn't want me to prematurely get into that place unprepared. Because if I get there unprepared thinking, I say, well, you said this, Lord, so I'm ready. Well, are you really ready to take that seat? You know, because you could be exalted, but you could quickly fall if you try to exalt yourself, I had to realize that was pride,
Talk, Mike.
that he was dealing with me, not knowing I was dealing with pride because I thought, this is what you said, Lord. This is what you called me to do. Notice I said, this is what you said. I said, this is what I was thinking. When the whole time he was dealing with me as a man, as a person. And I had to realize that he's the potter and I'm the clay.
That's it.
And that I am in his hand. What in the world the clay gonna tell the potter what to do?
The audacity.
But I can say throughout this journey, it's been an eye-opening. And there's things that I have grown into, and yet I'm still on the journey. So what I want to speak to you this morning, that I don't want you to be so frustrated in the process of becoming who God has called you to be, because God is trying to teach you something within the process. There was a lot of rejection, there was a lot of hurt, there was a lot of pain that I still was dealing with, how people perceive me. I was telling God all type of things like, God, I can't do this, I can't do that. Notice that what I was telling him, he'd be like, did I say that? I didn't say this. What did I say about you? He told Jeremiah, before I formed thee in the bed, I knew you and I ordained you. And then you going through the test, Jeremiah would tell you, you asked him, what do you see? And you told him what he see, but he was like, I'm so young. He said, don't talk about your age. We always tell God what our excuses are, but he already know. He already qualified you. He called it this. You're not, we always trying to qualify ourselves, but he already has qualified you for the position. And so I can even relate to Moses, how I was telling him, like, I can't do this and do that. You're like, well, who made mouth? I made your mouth. I called you. And, just throughout the day, you just kept on dialogue with God, just kept on telling God, like, you this, you that, you this, you that. And Moses was telling him the whole time, well, I can't this, I can't that. So you have to be careful with what you say, your words. And sometimes we get ambush our own self with our own words. And discount what God has really said about you, Minoso. So I just want to encourage you that even though you might feel insignificant, even though you might feel like you're not qualified, you are qualified for what he has ordained for you to be. And like he said, I feel uncomfortable. I do. It's uncomfortable. It's uneasy. I'll be honest with you. But the fact that I'm doing it and trusting in him to know that sometimes you have to share your story. You have to share what you've been through. And a lot of times people don't want to expose those things because you feel like, oh, I'm embarrassed about talking about this. I feel ashamed talking about this. But that's the beauty of it. You're overcome by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of your testimony. And as you begin to start thinking and start telling things about you, somebody needed to hear what you had to say. Somebody needed deliverance for what you had to say. Somebody needed some type of healing with what you had to say. Because you're not by yourself. And sometimes you always feel like you're by yourself, but you're really not by yourself. To be honest, we all together are on the journey. There's nobody excluded from this journey. So never think that you're by yourself. Never think that you're alone. Never think that.
Look, he said something so key there, right? And it's funny because it was in my spirit before I came here, and I'm glad that Holy Ghost had you say that. It's because we say this all the time. We say we are overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. There's so many layers to that. I'm going to get through it briefly because I want to get to mine. But I want you to think about how that really applies. So the blood being applied from what we know it is over the door, right? And so what was happening is there was people having conversation behind closed doors, right? And because they operated out of obedience, not experience. They operated out of obedience, not experience. And sometimes we only want to operate when we have experience. God said do, and they did. We had never seen blood placed over a door. We've seen sacrifices before. We've never seen blood placed on the door before this point in Exodus. Am I right about it? So we never seen this, so I'm now got to do this thing. I didn't mean to plug, but go ahead. I was like, am I right about it? Am I right about it? I love that joint. Anyway, but so I got to put you on to that, boy. Anyway, so so anyway, but you know what I'm saying, when the blood was being placed over the door, whatever have you, they were operating out of obedience, not experience. So here's something I want to take with you in your becoming. Operate out of obedience, and then you'll gain the experience. Let me say it again. Operate out of obedience, then you'll gain the experience. The experience of what? Walking in obedience. Because walking in obedience isn't always going to have all the understanding behind it, right? I have to receive the instruction. I may not have the understanding. You said put the blood over the door. I did. Now, come on. Besides Moses really knowing, most of the people there, right? And Moses might not even know because he's already tried 9 other things. He's already tried 9 other things that God said that didn't work. Did y'all catch what I just said? I've already tried 9 things that God said that didn't work. Because when I did this, I thought God was going to get me out of this heartbreak. When I did this, what God said, I thought I was going to get out of this brokenness. When I thought I was going to be out of this financial bind that I'm in, I was going to be out of this relational, deficit that I was in. I did this, and he done gave me 9 different things to do. And I'm still. And matter of fact, not only am I still here, it's actually gotten worse for me. I used to be able to put it together, and at least it didn't have to go far to go put it together. But now he's saying, you know what? You got to go farther to put it together to remain in the place that I said I was going to release you from. And so now behind these closed doors having this conversation is, and I don't know the conversations, but if you would, be a person with me real quick. I wonder what was happening behind them closed doors. Is it going to work this time? What's going to happen this time? I'm hearing all this hollering and screaming. So something's happening, but I can't see it. I can't identify who's screaming. Is it my neighbor? Is it Israel screaming? Or is it Egypt screaming? I don't know, because I'm behind this door. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And so the blood being the blood of the Lamb is what I'm getting at, right? So we overcome by the blood of the Lamb. But I'm waiting on the announcement to come, and I always love this part of it because the announcement comes from their captor. Because it's not Moses that tells them to leave, it's Pharaoh. Pharaoh's like, y'all get up out of here. Matter of fact, you finna bless me with your absence, so let me give you something on your way out. Right? Let me give you something on your way out. Anyway, here's the point I want to make, right? So these people that now are going to have this testimony about how the blood brought them out, they're being brought to a promised place that is foreign to them. So in your becoming, you're going to a foreign place. So your place of promise is foreign to you. That's why it feels like that. This don't feel comfortable because I'm used to being in the bondage of who I thought I was. I'm used to being in the bondage of, the identity that I created. But now God is saying, okay, now that you've gone through these 9 things that didn't work, you're going through all these things that's been said about you. I'm speaking to them and I'm speaking to you all as well. Now that I've been through all these perceived failures, it wasn't a failure, it was a part of the process. I need somebody to receive that. It wasn't a failure, it was a part of the process. And yeah, God did tell you to do all those things that you thought weren't working. No, that wasn't the enemy. That was Yah. Somebody said that was Yah. Watch this. Sometimes it's wearing you down. I feel Holy Ghost. Sometimes it's wearing you down, but it's wearing your captor out. I say sometimes it feels like it's wearing God. I feel Holy Ghost. I say sometimes it feels like it's wearing you down, but it's wearing your captor out. Watch this. So what has been keeping you? Can't keep. God help my soul. I say, so what's been keeping you? Even if you were the innkeeper. I said, what's been keeping you? Even though you were the innkeeper. How many know that you've been holding yourself captive? How many of you can be honest, be like, you know what, all this stuff ain't the devil? Sometimes we've been drawn away by our own lust. Sometimes we've been lured away by our own disappointment. Sometimes we've been lured away by our own perception of failure because it didn't work this 9 times and I was obeying God. I saw God move this way, right? I saw God move, but I was stuck. The blood came to the water, did it not? I saw God move. Man, look, y'all better talk. I said, I saw God move, but I'm stuck. So I'm hearing the man, woman of God, or it might even be coming to me, right? So whether we put ourselves in the seat of Moses or whether we see ourselves in the seat of the people, they're experiencing the same things at different levels. How is it as a leader in your household that I'm telling my children God is going to move? And God is moving, but we still stuck as a family. How am I as somebody who sits in a household trying to believe these two, wonderful men and women of God, and they telling me God moving, God, God's going to get us out of this situation, and I see God moving, but I'm still stuck. Because we want to act like them 10 plagues happened in 10 days. I'm here to tell you that ain't how it went. That is not how it went. Are you hearing what I'm saying? So we want to be like, day 1 was plague 1, day 2 was plague 2. No, that ain't how it went. So again, man, chime in, man. Don't make me cook. This is a crock pot. We cook.
I'm gonna chime in on the stuck part. I was stuck for many years, and the reason I was stuck, honestly, is because I felt justified. I have a reason.
Come now.
To be the way that I am. Don't y'all know my mama left me? I got a reason to be mad. I got a reason to harbor unforgiveness in my heart. I got a reason to be angry at her. I had a reason to blame her. It's your fault I'm like this. And so because of that, I remained stuck for a very, very long time, not realizing that healing was my responsibility. It didn't matter what she did.
Oh, what?
How my responsibility was to get better. Sometimes we're holding the captor or we're holding the person who wronged us as an idol because we want them to be the ones to fix us. I'm going to wait for you to apologize and for you to acknowledge what you did to me first, and then I will get better. I will heal when you say sorry. So now they're God to me.
Oh, no.
They're the idols on my heart. And so for a long time, that kept me stuck. I had a right to be mad, and I had the right to be hurt. And I did, but I also had a right to heal. And I wasn't walking in what God said I was supposed to have. And I could not become with all that stuff in my heart. And so I think a part of being stuck is we have to realize that we, as he said, we hold ourselves hostage longer than we need to be held hostage. Yes, it happened. Yes, it happened to you, but how we going to get through it? We going to stay over here, or we going to walk through some stuff so we can get better? And so one of the things, I call him Pastor Cousin, y'all, all the time. No disrespect. It's really endearing.
I love it.
But one of the things that I really learned was in my healing process that the mirror was not on the people that hurt me. The mirror was on me. You have to be willing to look at you. The children, you were talking about the children of Israel, it was some stuff going on with them. Because you got to think about, at one point, they wanted to go back to Egypt.
Come now.
We know that. Yeah, you're trying to set us free, and we done begged you to set us free. We done cried out for you to set us free. But soon as something comes up that don't look like freedom or a way I've never been before, okay, we'll just go back because I know that. I know I'm going to get these onions and leeks over here. What is manna? And so sometimes that's kind of how we walking through. What is this healing? What is this becoming? This is all very foreign to me. And sometimes, a lot of times it's scary. I'm going to tell you because as I walk through this, sometimes I'll be like, who are you?
To yourself.
You to myself. I'm like, you're not that 8-year-old little girl that your mama left. You're a daughter of God.
Come now.
I've had to, but when I see myself, and sometimes it's still a rest, so I'm not going to lie, because I got that mentality sometimes trying to hold me back in my hurt. Trying to pull me back to Egypt when God has said, you're free already. You're not even in Egypt anymore. It is the mentality that keeps us stuck. We can be moving and still be stuck because they were out of Egypt on their way somewhere that they'd never been before, but they were still stuck. Mindset. And so my stuck was in my mind. So what did I have to do? I had to renew my mind. Every day I had to renew and it's ongoing. It's a renewing of the mind. How are you transformed from the inside out? It's not about looking pretty on the outside because I've been pretty my whole life. I just want y'all to know that. My entire life. But I was broken. I was stuck. My heart was cold. It was hard. I had unforgiveness and bitterness and entitlement. I felt like I had the right. But I didn't know also I had the right to be healed. So we have to be willing to let go of some things so that we can really move forward. Because as Pastor Cousin was saying, he said God was already moving, but they were stuck somewhere. So we got it. When we start getting better, when we start becoming, when we start really walking into what God has called us to do, we're in step with him and we're paced with him and we're moving with him. And he's not looking back saying, y'all coming? Because I'm moving. And so becoming really is catching up to me, catching up to who God says you are. It's catching up to your identity. It's catching up to who God says you are. Not what your experiences have told you, because I lived in that for so long that it held me hostage. So I really just wanted to bring that out. Sometimes we can be stuck when we're free. We're free, not in the same location is what I'm saying, but our minds are not free. So we have to be liberated by the renewing of our minds. And that's how we really start moving with God, when we start thinking and seeing ourselves the way, having his perspective to move with him.
So one thing that you said that was so key and so, again, that's why I love conversations, because it makes your mind work. One thing that you said, too, you talk about looking in the mirror, right? And something dawned on me about looking in the mirror, right? So when you're looking at the mirror, right, if everybody was to get your phone, right, you're looking at the mirror, you are looking at a reflection, right? And that reflection is revealing how you look right now. So you're never looking at a mirror, looking at a review. Does that make sense? And sometimes this is why, again, I said I get all the psychology behind it, trying to heal the young. I get it. But here's the fact, right? When I look in the mirror, if I'm trying to, all the women in here, even the men who have groomed themselves, right? You know what I'm saying? Got the goatee on fleek, you know what I mean? I see you. So you know what I'm saying? But when you look in the mirror, you're trying to fix yourself presently. Right? You wake up now did anybody wake up this morning and not check how they look before they got here? Right? So when you got up this morning, you tried to fix your face. Did you not? Why? You tried to fix your face. You tried to either wash your face. You should have. But you should have washed it. You tried to do something to fix your face, right, so that you could be presentable as you are now. So while you were looking at that, trying to fix whatever it was, line up whatever that you was doing, you were trying to fix where you are currently. Because if you jacked up currently, you understand what I'm saying? I can't go back and fix what was messed up yesterday. My whole style was different yesterday. Does that make sense? So I'm not trying to go back and fix what was yesterday. I can't fix what was yesterday. I can only fix what's today. That makes sense? So I don't want us to look at, and you're going to see that past person. That's a fact. That's a fact. But you're not looking at a reflection. You're reviewing. And I need you to see that in the spirit realm. when you see the former you, the younger you, the used to be you, you're not looking at a reflection. You're looking at a review. Does that make sense? You can't fix the review. That's called revisionist history. You see what I'm saying? You can only fix what is present. So watch this. In your becoming, you have to be aware of your revealing. Let me say it again. In your becoming, you have to be aware of your revealing. And every time you step in front of that mirror, guess what? It's revealing what today looks like. Does that make sense to everybody? Mike, give me something good, partner. I like to mess with you. But in your becoming, and I want to get to one more thing before we wrap this up. But in your becoming and looking at that and saying, okay, I don't have these things, and now I've been told these things, and now I have I have a clearer picture of who God is telling me to become. I have a clearer picture of that. How would you advise somebody to navigate in that space? We understand things like prayer, whatever, hey, but if you could give me something, again, how do you kind of navigate in that space?
Well, for me, once I kind of understood the direction I need to go to, I thought about connecting with somebody
Good.
that I know that can help me to get to that place where I need to be. Um, Identifying that person, you just can't connect with just anybody or your friends or whoever. It has to be a God connection to where there's something in them that you see in them that is in you. So, for instance, I saw my apostle at the time, and I just saw certain things about her that I actually saw myself doing. So when my mindset was like, let me connect with that so I can get a blueprint as far as how it's done and how I can become me, but how I can become what God has created me to be, not becoming like her or him, but becoming who God has called me to be. So I think connection is a key to it as well. Not only is connection, but you also have to put in the work. Sometimes as you start putting in the work, you get a little weary and tired. Like, I gotta do this. I gotta do this. Something else that's on my list. I gotta do this. Something else I gotta do this. Something else I do. And in the process of you doing, you get a little tired. But you say, now be not weary in well doing, for you shall reap if you not faint not. That's what the word says. So you cannot faint or be weary in the process of you becoming. It's a process that you have to go through. It's a process that you have to move. So as you start seeking with the Spirit of God, He will lead you and guide you in that direction to where you can become that what you have already seen, because He already gave you a preview of who you are. Now you just had to come again, as I was saying earlier, in alignment with that.
Very important. Very important. So I want to kind of cross this last thing, and you said such a key word to kind of segue into that. Look at God, just help me with this segue. I appreciate you, cuzzo. All right. So but you said something very key, and something I actually did want to talk about as we get into this last portion of it. How many of y'all been enjoying this so far? Y'all been enjoying this so far? All right. All right. So here we go. You were talking about connection. So I want to set up this because there's a lot of places that we can go with this particular next thing, but I kind of want to streamline it a little bit if we can. So you were talking about the power and the necessity of connectivity, right? And so I think one of the most, especially for those of us that are in right relationships, we can say this with right relationships, but I do want to speak to intimate or a marital type of relationship, especially you all not having that example that we talked about, because what I'm saying. You spoke to becoming him and all the dynamics that comes with. You spoke to becoming her and the dynamics of what that comes with. Now I kind of want to talk about the dynamics of becoming us. And so it's like, help us, like, so principally speaking, but you can talk relationally as well, but like that becoming us because we're getting older. We're getting more mature. We're growing, and sometimes you're in a growth season and he's not. Sometimes he's in a growth season and you're not. And this is kind of how I want to streamline it. There's something that went around in church, and sometimes you see it if you look at all the little relational podcasts or whatever have you, and everybody's talking about, New Heights is familiar with this line of thinking, saying your wife and or your husband becoming your peace. Right? Oh, I just want them to be my peace, right? Watch this. They're not supposed to be either spelling. Let me say it again. They're not supposed to be either or either, whichever way you say it. They're not supposed to be either spelling. They're not here to be your peace. Does that make sense? Because if you want to be in a right relationship, you got to be working with somebody who is working to be whole, right? We've been made whole. We're working in that wholeness. Does that make sense? So God has made us whole. I need everybody to receive that. Say, God has made me whole. Somebody like, I ain't seen it yet. You in process. So God has made you, okay, we becoming. Are you hearing what I'm saying? So it's like, in that wholeness, I want to, the fallacy is that even having discernment, right? Even being super saved, right? Mike, what do you look like? Anyway, even having revelation, like my good friend Mike had, even being in, again, being somebody who's mature in the spirit realm, somebody who's growing in the spirit realm, understand that when I'm in, whether I'm beginning looking for a relationship or in a relationship, that this is an ongoing process, right? And so the idea is I'm going to get married when I'm ready. Huh? So I'm going to get married when I got all my finances figured out. I'm going to get married when I done worked through all my childhood trauma. I'm going to get married when, you know what I'm saying? Right? You're going to be single with an A. You're going to be single. And so when we talk about being somebody's quote-unquote piece, either spelling is off. Because, like, my wife is not a piece of me. She's all of me. Because we are one. Does that make sense? So she ain't no piece of me. Does that make sense? And watch this. She's also not my piece. As in the other P-E, you know what I'm saying? Why is that? And y'all can speak to this in the dynamic, but I think where we mislead people is when we rely on somebody to be what God is supposed to be for us. And so now I want my wife to be my peace. And so when she's not my peace, I'm disappointed in my God. And now God has failed me because God isn't giving me peace. I thought you said your wife was your peace. Now you get my point. And so now when this person is having their bad day, because, you know, God forbid, if your spouse has a moment, God forbid, if they come home and you having a bad day and they just happen to be in another headspace, that they don't serve you, God forbid, that person doesn't address all of what's going on, because today's trigger was childhood. Tomorrow's trigger was the job, whatever it was, and they was in their own experience, having their own time where they couldn't serve you. Now, yes, we should serve each other, but they had a moment when they couldn't serve you, and now you sitting up here like, well, God ain't hearing my prayer because of what this person is doing. And so that's why I think it's a huge fallacy to call anyone our peace either spelling, because they should never be that. So how do you all, and describe it in your own way, how do you all view becoming us, as in you two? You know, how do you be, how does that work? How do you navigate that space?
First thing I want to tell you is, family in here, we candid, but what you talked about being the peace and your spouse being this or being that, I used to be like that. I married, you know, Mike and I married really, really young, so I didn't have a sense of identity. And because of that, I made him my everything. So Mike, and this may be his first time ever hearing this, but the Lord revealed to me, and these were times when, you know, our relationship, we was going through things in our marriage, and the Lord had me on my face, and he told me, I'm God, not Mike. He said, you have Mike as your God in your heart, and even your marriage. And he said, I am dismantling that so you know that I am God. And so sometimes we put people in the wrong place, or they're displaced because we're not connected to God, or we don't have the relationship with him as our everything. So it really helped me align my heart with the Lord. And it also aligned my heart with my husband. And so I think, to your point, it's really good that when you get married, that you get to know who you are in God. Who are you to him?
Yes.
And I'm not saying that don't get married before you find it out. It's great if you know it before you get married, because I didn't know none of this. I didn't know any of this before I got married. Like he was saying, you know, you can't wait till you're perfect to do it. And sometimes when you get married, you don't really know what you're doing. But anyway, thanks be to God. God has been the glue to our marriage, because Mike and I, Pastor Cousin was in our wedding. I don't know, Shantae. Anyway, he was in our wedding. We got married in this church 30 years ago. And we got married in this church twice because we did our 10 years here. But my whole point of saying is, you don't know where you're coming from to where you're going to be today, like he was saying. So I just really wanted to say that, like, make sure that God is the center of your heart and the center of your marriage. One of the things I really try to do is to make sure we stay connected. Always be in each other's world. Be interested in your spouse's world, even if it's not necessarily your interest. Because sometimes we're like, well, I don't like that. Well, your husband like it? Can you spend some time with him doing it? If so, get with him and connect with him in a way that something he likes to do, and vice versa. That is one of the things I always try to be mindful of. We also have a mindset of thinking of the other person before we think of ourselves. So how can I serve you? How can I cater to you? What do you need? And so that also helps us stay connected, because it keeps line of communication open. We also have times where we'll talk about, am I neglecting you in any way? Sometimes those conversations people don't want to have, but sometimes, you can't have expectations for things that are not communicated.
Come on.
Sometimes we have unspoken expectations and get mad when we disappointed. But they didn't know. They can't read your mind. So I think a big part of it is being open in communication and not being offended and on defense when your spouse is being honest with you. Like, because sometimes we can walk around offended, and then that spouse ain't gonna want to never say nothing to you because they got to walk on eggshells around you. So you don't want that either. You want you want to be able to come to each other and address things, good or bad. It doesn't matter. We in this for the long haul. We don't fall in and out of love. That's not our thing. We're committed to the commitment. And that's, sometimes you got to remember that. I'm committed to the commitment, and sometimes commitment don't have a feeling. I'm just committed. And you have to have that kind of resolve on the inside of you, especially when you say your vows and you say them entering into a God idea, because marriage is a God idea. So that's just some of the things that we do. We can be a lot more, but I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, on that note too, especially with me and my wife, before we even got married, I told her from the start, I said, you my wife. She looked at me, whatever. She's like, don't play no games with me. I don't got time to play no games with me and stuff. But I knew when I met her that she was my wife. And I told her that. It was just fast forwarding. We got married at an early age, and like she said, we didn't have a blueprint as far as, what marriage is supposed to be, how it's supposed to look like. We had our ups and downs in the marriage as well, but it was one thing we did have agreed on, is that we was committed to each other, and we had a lot of communication with each other. Communication is so key, because you cannot always assume or think, like she was saying, about your spouse. You have to talk. We have each month, our sit down, pow, communication, to where we just talk about anything, talk about our bills, we talk about whatever, what's on your heart, what's on your mind, how you feeling, those things like that. Because the person who she was yesterday is not the same person she is today. So I have to meet the person today, because she evolved, she changed. And so sometimes we get too comfortable and too familiar with our spouse that we come to assumption or assume that this is okay when it's really not okay. But if you don't communicate and have that heart-to-heart talk with your spouse, you will never know. even at times when we had like our miscommunication, we had like what they call intensive fellowship. Her favorite word is same team, same team, same team. She always shoot that. She always say that. Why? Because in that mode, we going at each other. One don't have a clear head, but somebody, whether it's her or me, had to say something to cut the conversation to where it's like, okay, we recognize that that's the enemy and it's causing confusion between both of us. Nobody's hearing each other, but because of that one word, sanctity, it cuts it off to where now it grabs our attention and now we're focused on each other, not looking at each other as the enemy, but looking at each other as this is my wife, this is my husband.
You gotta grow with each other,
You
even
gotta
as
grow.
you evolve. Grow with each other. So that's why I was like getting each other's world because, we were so young when we got married. It's been 30 years. We're definitely not the same people. So if you assume that that person is the same person, then you're doing yourself a disservice. And so it's really good to grow with your spouse, for sure.
You're not going to stay married to the person you married.
Exactly.
You are not going to stay married to the person you married. Because again, you're going to change. Dynamics are going to change. Mindsets are going to change, right? And it can be for the better. And I think something that I'm going to definitely take away from this is, and it's funny because I thought about it while y'all were speaking, and I'm taking it all in. I'm like, and I kind of want to run to my own relationship first, right? And then God was like, this is about me first. And so I just want to bring this to everybody's attention that we serve a God who is committed to our becoming. Are you hearing what I'm saying? We serve a God who is committed to our becoming because, watch this, he will never leave you or forsake you because he's committed to your becoming. So watch this. You don't think that God is frustrated sometimes when you're doubting yourself and he's like, but I've already told you who you are and whose you are, and you're still in your own head, but I'm going to wait on you because I know that you're going to see it, right? I pulled all the obstacles out of your way. You got to get out of your own way. You got to get out of your own headspace, right? And so I'm glad that we serve a God that is committed to our becoming and in right relationship, whether that be in friendship, whether that be in marriage. I think that that's something that even if we formulate our own way of saying it, that we have to be committed to our becoming. Because, watch this, we're becoming us. You know what I'm saying? Who my parents became, I didn't learn until my father passed fully. Does that make sense? Because that's when that was, okay, can you be committed when the strength of the house can't get out of his bed? Are you hearing what I'm saying? What happens when the person that you look to, this is the person we look to. My daddy didn't have to say much, but you look to him for strength, right? He was physically strong and all that, spiritually strong and all that. But what happens when he's just laying there and he can't even get out of sentence? Now what happens? Are you still committed, or were you committed to the idea of the out of Vietnam, super strong, super cut, whatever that was, whatever that looked like at that point? Because a lot of people are attracted and get into relationships with ideas, right? And so, like, saying, I have this idea when that person no longer serves my idea. And truth be told, ideas are growth, they hinder growth, right? So ideas, watch this, ideas with people are counterproductive. Ideas with people are counterproductive. Why do I say that? It's because you have no idea what that person's going to become because you don't even know what you're going to become. And so your idea of who they should become, you're actually closing them in on who they could become, especially if you have any kind of influence in them and you're supposed to be this instead of being like, okay, I'm just going to walk with you, believing, right, who you're supposed to become and finding it out because watch this, it might be a different dynamic. I don't want to say greater or lesser. It might be a different dynamic than what I saw, but because I'm committed to your becoming, as long as it's in a forward progression, right? As long as there's a growth, as long as it's positive, as long as it's God-led, I'm going to walk with you. Does that make sense? And so I kind of want to pull up right here, and I want to offer something in this atmosphere of becoming. And first, could we just put our hands together for, I guess,